The morning began like any other. Henry stood in the kitchen, flipping scrambled eggs in a skillet while the smell of coffee drifted softly through the air. The pale amber of early sunlight crept through the blinds, streaking across the countertop. The radio hummed low in the background, soft jazz, something Avery always insisted calmed her nerves in the morning. He wore sweatpants and a faded gray tee, barefoot, methodically tending breakfast. It was domestic, familiar, a rhythm they had cultivated over years of repetition. "Did you remember to pick up orange juice yesterday?" Avery called out from the hallway, her voice muffled as she rummaged through the coat closet. "Yep. Fridge door. Behind the salad dressing," Henry replied without looking up. Avery padded into the kitchen a moment later, barefoot in her silk robe, brushing her damp blonde hair behind her ears. She looked refreshed, glowing even, though Henry couldn't place why it struck him as different this morning. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself a mug of coffee. "Usually you snooze the alarm 6 times before breakfast exists." He smirked faintly. "Had an early call reschedule. Figured I'd use the time." She leaned against the island, sipping, eyes flicking toward the hallway. "Micah's still asleep?" "Like a rock." Henry noticed her fingers trembling slightly as she raised the cup again. She was distracted. He couldn't quite explain it. Something in the way she wouldn't meet his eyes. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. Breakfast passed in relative quiet. They exchanged pleasantries, casual updates about work. Avery mentioned an upcoming marketing pitch, something she'd been prepping for all week. Henry half listened, nodding in the right places, but his attention was drifting, hovering just slightly out of focus. After they finished eating, she kissed him on the cheek and said, "I'll shower before Micah wakes up." "Thanks for breakfast, babe." "Sure," he murmured, watching her disappear down the hall. He wasn't even sure what pulled him to the bathroom afterward. It wasn't suspicion, just a reflex, a vague instinct as he moved to tidy up the house. He began gathering towels, wiping the counter, straightening the toiletries. It wasn't until he lifted the small silver trash bin beside the toilet that he noticed it. Half buried beneath a wad of tissues, a pregnancy test. The blue line was unmistakable. Positive. For a moment, everything went still. Henry stared at it, heart beginning to thump steadily in his chest. A surreal silence wrapped around him. His hand tightened around the plastic stick as if willing the result to change, to disappear, to become irrelevant. But it didn't. His breath slowed. His vision tunneled. And a single, disorienting thought pressed through his fogged mind. "I had a vasectomy 11 months ago." He placed the test gently back in the trash, like it might explode if he wasn't careful. His stomach churned as he stared at the bin, bile rising into his throat. Still, he said nothing. Not when Avery emerged from the bathroom in a fresh outfit, hair tied up. Not when she kissed him goodbye on her way out the door, grabbing her purse like it was any other day. Not even when Micah came running down the stairs, asking for his tablet and cinnamon toast. Henry moved like a ghost through the rest of the day, a numb buzz in his ears, thoughts spiraling in disconnected loops. The ceiling above his desk at the home office blurred out of focus as he stared at nothing, while the spreadsheet on his monitor sat untouched for hours. He tried to rationalize. Maybe the test wasn't hers. Maybe she was helping a friend. Maybe it was old, something from the past he hadn't seen before. But he had cleaned that trash can 2 days ago. That night, while Avery read on the couch, Henry laid in bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching it spin in a hypnotic blur. Sleep refused to come. His chest ached with every breath. Could she have cheated? Was Micah not mine either? Why would she do this? When she finally slipped into bed beside him, curling up with her back pressed to his chest, he felt colder than he ever had in his life. The next morning was quieter. A strange energy hung in the air. Avery left earlier than usual. Something about a breakfast meeting with her boss. Henry made excuses to work from home again. He needed space, clarity. Micah had gone to a friend's house for a sleepover, which left the house empty and silent. Henry brewed coffee, poured it into a travel mug, and stood near the staircase when he heard the buzz of Avery's voice from upstairs. He paused. She was in their bedroom, on the phone. The door cracked just enough for her voice to carry down the hall. I know, Mom, she whispered sharply. Yes, I took it this morning. It's positive. Henry froze. Avery's voice trembled with irritation, not fear. Yes, I'm sure it's his. Of course I'll tell Henry it's his. I did this with the first child. He didn't notice then, either. Henry's lungs stalled. His ears rang. Then she added, casually, cruelly, my lover isn't ready for kids. You think I'd sabotage that over a man like Henry? Henry felt the breath punch out of him. He staggered slightly against the wall, gripping the doorframe for balance. His hands were trembling, and he didn't know if it was rage or heartbreak or something far worse. He felt like he'd been shot point blank. It wasn't just the infidelity. It was the implication. That Micah, his son, wasn't his. That this had been a lie not just now, but for years. Henry slowly backed away from the hallway, retreating like a man pulling his hand from fire. He moved to the kitchen, gripping the counter until his knuckles turned white. Memories flooded in, Micah's first steps, his first scraped knee, his first science fair, all of them now flickering with the taint of deception. He heard the bedroom door close upstairs. Avery was done with the call, done plotting, done sealing a lie inside a man she thought too blind to see it. Henry stared out the window, watching the neighbor's sprinklers turn in soft arcs over green grass. Everything looked normal, peaceful, beautiful even, but inside him something snapped. Not violently, not loudly. It was a quiet shift, a slow burn. The pain didn't make him scream. It made him cold. He didn't storm up the stairs. He didn't accuse her. He just stood there, silent, steadying himself, drawing in a breath as a storm started to grow behind his eyes. He wouldn't confront her. Not yet. He needed to be sure. He needed time. And most of all, he needed to burn this life down in silence, the same way she'd built her lies. Brick by brick, smile by smile, word by careful word. She had lit the fuse with betrayal. He would be the one to light the match. The next morning, the house felt quieter than it had any right to. The birds outside chirped as always, the dishwasher hummed, and yet the air itself felt stale, like something had already died inside these walls. Henry stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, scanning the space that, for 10 years, had been his sanctuary. His jaw was clenched, face unreadable, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. He moved mechanically, methodical, detached. There was no trembling in his fingers now, no hesitation. Just focus. Step 1. Disappear. Avery had left for work 15 minutes ago. A marketing meeting, she'd said. Hair curled, lipstick perfect, heels clicking confidently as she kissed his cheek like she hadn't detonated his world. He didn't kiss her back. Now, alone, Henry opened the closet. He pulled out the suitcase she bought him last Christmas, ironic, and unzipped it with quiet purpose. He packed deliberately. 2 pairs of jeans for button-ups, 2 hoodies, socks, underwear, his running shoes, his passport, his laptop. Nothing sentimental. No wedding photos. No anniversary mementos. He left his wedding ring on the nightstand like a corpse tag. In the bathroom, he gathered his shaving kit, his prescription meds, the bottle of cologne she liked but he now hated. He glanced once more at the trash can, the same place he had found the pregnancy test. It was empty now. She'd likely flushed her secrets, thinking it would keep them safe. Too late. Back in the living room, he unlocked the fireproof safe under the sofa. Inside were their marriage documents, joint tax returns, home insurance papers. He grabbed only what had his name on it. Then, from a different drawer, he took out a burner phone he'd bought 2 weeks after the vasectomy, just in case. He never thought he'd need it. Step 2. Inform the other victim. He sat at the kitchen table with a pen and the stiff kind of paper you use when what you're writing will ruin someone's world. He kept it short, honest, and attached the pregnancy test with a photo of the test strip's date stamp from the pharmacy app Avery used. He printed out screenshots from their shared calendar, entries titled strategy meetings that matched days Avery had claimed to be working late. Then he wrote her name on the envelope. Kara Dawson, confidential. He knew her address. He and Avery had once gone to a company Christmas party at her and Brian's house. She'd seemed nice, warm, chatty. She'd even complimented Henry's bourbon choices. He wondered now how much of her life had been a lie, too. He placed the envelope in a padded mailer, sealed it tight, and drove to the local post office. No return address. When the clerk asked if he wanted a tracking number, Henry said no. Let it find her. Back at the house, he disconnected the landline and turned off his iPhone. He pulled the SIM card out and snapped it in half, tossing the pieces in 2 separate bins. Step 3. Vanish. He pulled out of the driveway in his old Jeep, glancing once, only once, into the rearview mirror. The house looked just as it always had. White siding, black shutters, roses growing wildly along the walkway. Picture perfect, but inside it was hollow. He didn't leave a note. Let her feel the silence. At 5:34 p.m., Avery stepped into the house, heels clicking against hardwood, phone tucked under her ear as she laughed at something Brian said. Her laughter died the second she saw the empty entryway. "Henry," she called, frowning. No answer. She walked to the kitchen. His keys weren't in the bowl. His shoes were gone. The laptop was missing from the charging dock. Her fingers tightened around her phone. "Hey, can I call you back?" she said to Brian. "Yeah, just." "Weird. Henry isn't home. Something's off." She hung up, moving through the house faster now. Closet, half empty. Bathroom, his razor gone. Bedroom, drawers open, ransacked. Her pulse began to quicken. She opened the safe. Her documents were untouched. His were missing. No, she whispered, stumbling back. She dialed his phone, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Avery's face drained of color as she backed into the living room, eyes darting, breath shallowing. Her chest began to rise and fall like a panicked swimmer. She called her mother. "Mom, he's gone." "What do you mean gone?" her mother said sharply. "I mean gone. His stuff's missing. His phone's off. He didn't leave a note. He just vanished." There was silence on the other end. Then her mother said cautiously, "Avery, did you find out?" Avery sank onto the couch, hand to her mouth. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know," her mother hissed. "You should have gotten rid of that damn test. What if he saw it?" "I did. I threw it out." "You should have flushed it, Avery." "I didn't think he'd dig through the trash." "Well, he obviously did. And now he's gone, and you don't even know where he is? God help us, shut up." Avery shouted, voice cracking. "Just shut up. I'm dealing with it." But she wasn't, and she knew it. By midnight, she had called all his friends. No one had heard from him. No one had seen him. She had driven to his office. His desk was cleared out. His email auto-replied with an indefinite leave notice. She called his sister, his cousin, even his old college roommate. Nothing. She tried Micah's school the next morning. Henry hadn't shown up. Her fingers shook as she texted again. "Please, Henry. Please just talk to me. Please come home." No response. Then the calls began coming in from a different direction. Brian's phone buzzed around 9 a.m. the following day. He answered, cheerful. "Kara? Hey, what's up?" Her voice was ice. "You disgusting piece of garbage." "What?" "You cheated on me. For 6 years. With Avery." His silence was deafening. She continued, voice rising. "You let me think Micah was Henry's child. You let her lie about this new baby. You lied to me every day, Brian. Every single goddamn day." He opened his mouth to protest, but all that came out was a stammer. "A man I barely knew respected me more than you ever did. You should be ashamed of yourself." Then came the dial tone. By evening, Avery sat curled on the edge of the couch, her phone dead in her lap, eyes swollen and red. The silence in the house was unbearable. No clinking of dishes from Henry, no casual humming from upstairs. Just stillness. She scrolled through her camera roll, stopping on a photo of Henry holding Micah at the zoo, grinning, sunburnt, with ice cream dripping down his shirt. He looked so genuinely happy. She pressed her hand to her lips. "What have I done?" Her mother called again. "Any word?" "No." Avery murmured, voice thin. "He'll come around. He's not like other men," she whispered. "He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just left." Her mother paused. "You need to think about damage control, Avery. Fast." Avery didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the window, watching the wind bend the trees outside. Her thumb hovered over the call log, scrolling through the dozens of unanswered calls. She didn't know it yet, but the storm had already begun. Henry had always been the kind of man who preferred quiet logic over dramatic gestures. He didn't shout. He didn't slam doors. He simply acted, and this time his actions were nuclear. For the first few days after his disappearance, he had lived in a modest, furnished rental a few cities away, small, anonymous, and most importantly, quiet. The kind of place no one would think to look for him. It gave him time to breathe, to calculate, to smother every last ember of sympathy inside himself. Then he began pulling strings. He started with Brian Dawson. Henry had spent over a decade in operations management. He knew how company systems worked, how HR departments documented travel reimbursements, how hotel receipts were filed, how access logs tracked who went where and when. While Avery had been busy screwing her coworker, Henry had quietly built a digital paper trail that painted a portrait of long-standing, inappropriate conduct. He sent a carefully crafted dossier, anonymously, to Brian's company's board of directors and human resources. It included hotel bookings paid through corporate cards, double occupancy rooms booked under Brian's name, while Avery had off-site meetings on the same days. Screenshots of emails, flirtatious, even explicit, he had found months ago on their shared iPad, which he had quietly backed up. 2 photographs. One was from a company retreat in Miami, where Brian and Avery had slipped away from the group. The timestamp showed 1:47 a.m. The second was from a dinner she'd said was just team building. She was leaning against him like they were more than colleagues. All perfectly time-stamped. All indisputable. He didn't include a return address. He didn't need to. By Wednesday morning, Brian Dawson was escorted out of his office by security. His boss had received the file, followed by a whisper storm from senior leadership. Violation of company policy, they'd said. Inappropriate conduct with a subordinate. Damage to corporate image. Immediate termination. When Brian attempted to protest, one of the board members held up a printed screenshot of him telling Avery, "You look way too sexy in that blouse to be talking business." There was nothing left to say. Kara, his now estranged wife, had already begun locking him out of their joint accounts. But Henry wasn't done. Avery was next. She was ambitious, always climbing, always posturing herself as the picture-perfect professional. Her company had strict ethics guidelines. Henry remembered how proud she'd been when she'd made the team lead position last spring. So he sent a second package. This one went to her human resources department. Inside, a USB with the same hotel overlaps and calendar inconsistencies. An anonymous letter claiming a potential ongoing workplace affair involving a subordinate and her married coworker that had persisted for years. A printed copy of company trip itinerary where Avery had claimed extensive overtime, and Brian had signed off on it. By Friday, whispers had begun to swirl at Avery's office. HR called her in for a routine audit. She returned home rattled, the blood drained from her face. "They're saying someone sent in a complaint," she told her mother over the phone that evening, pacing the kitchen. "Anonymous. Accusing me of having an affair with Brian. Can you believe that? Someone's trying to sabotage me." Her mother murmured something unintelligible. Avery's eyes were wild. "They're reviewing emails, Mom. My company emails. They asked about hotel receipts from 3 years ago. How the hell would anyone even know about that?" Her mother was quiet for a beat too long. Then, "Do you think Henry?" Avery's face twisted in disbelief. "He wouldn't. He's not like that." But even as she said it, her voice shook. Meanwhile, Henry had moved on to the legal stage. He visited a trusted attorney in the next county, someone with a reputation for thoroughness and confidentiality. "I want to file for divorce," he said calmly, placing the manila folder on the table. "And I want paternity tests for both children." Quietly, "She doesn't know yet." The attorney blinked, processing the words. "Both children?" Henry gave a single nod. "I have reason to believe. Neither are mine." The attorney exhaled sharply. "We'll handle this carefully." It took less than 2 weeks. 2 cheek swabs. 2 sets of sealed documents. One truth. Micah, 6 years old. Not the father. Amelia, 11 years old. Also not the father. The results didn't come as a surprise. But Henry still sat in his car for a long while after leaving the clinic, fingers clenched around the papers, letting the weight of that betrayal sink into his bones. He had raised Amelia since she was in diapers, helped her with her first loose tooth, stayed up all night when she had the flu. All for a lie. The moment Avery received the paternity request through certified mail, she broke down. She didn't cry, not at first. She screamed. "He wants what?" She shrieked at her mother. "He wants paternity tests? After everything? After all these years?" Her mother's expression had turned grave. "What if he already knows, Avery?" "No," she snapped. "He can't. No one knows but you. We never told anyone." "Avery," her mother said slowly, "I think you underestimate how smart that man is." She tried calling Henry again. 23 missed calls. 37 unread texts. She left voicemails, long, desperate messages filled with trembling apologies. "Henry, please. Let's just talk. Please. Don't do this to the kids. They need you. I need you. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. But I never stopped loving you. Please just come home. You're a good man. You don't want to ruin everything. We can fix this. We can get help." He didn't answer. She went to his sister's house. His old gym. Even a coffee shop he used to frequent every Saturday. No sign of him. Every door was closed. Every lead cold. By the time the divorce papers arrived, she had run out of tears. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. It was formal. Cold. There were no notes. No explanations. Just pages of legal documentation and 2 small checkboxes for visitation rights. She stared at them for a long time. Later that night, her mother sat beside her on the living room floor, both of them quiet. "He really isn't coming back, is he?" Avery whispered. Her mother didn't answer. "I told him it was his baby," she said hollowly. "I really believed I could make it work. Brian didn't want the child. I thought Henry would just believe me again." Her mother finally spoke. "I told you lies always come back. You were greedy, Avery. You had a man who loved you, raised children that weren't his, and you threw it away for office sex and lazy promises. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You let it." They sat in silence. The walls that once held wedding photos and baby shoes now felt suffocatingly empty. The ticking of the clock mocked them with every second. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the fire Henry had set smoldered silently, leaving behind only ashes. The air had changed. Avery felt at the moment she stepped out of her apartment building. The lingering stares, the whispering clusters at the corners of sidewalks, the thinly veiled smirks from neighbors she'd once greeted with ease. There was no longer the polite nod or forced smile. Now, there was silence and judgment. It wasn't just whispers anymore. Her name was being shared. Publicly. Brutally. The first social media post hit like a bomb. Kara, Brian's wife, had uploaded a simple post on Facebook. No rant. No dramatic caption. Just a photo of the leaked voice recordings transcription, laid out in perfect clarity. "Of course I'll tell him it's his. I did this with the first child. He didn't notice. My lover isn't ready for kids." The caption read only, "For the women who think betrayal doesn't have consequences. My children and I deserve better." So did he. It spread like wildfire. Over 5,000 shares in 48 hours. Screenshots on Instagram. TikToks reading the transcript out loud, pairing it with crying emojis and captions like, "She really faked 2 paternity tests, skull. Avery didn't just feel exposed. She felt filleted, skinned alive by strangers who knew nothing about her, but now judged her like a national villain. Her inbox filled with venom. Anonymous messages. Threats. Doxing. The story of the woman who lied to her husband about 2 kids and cheated for 6 years was now internet fodder. Her name, her face, even her LinkedIn profile, shamed, mocked, and dissected. Worse still was when the audio leaked. A voice memo Henry had clearly recorded, Avery's own voice, casual, smug, dripping with deception. "He's too soft. He'll believe anything I tell him. He did before." Then her mother's voice. "Just like with Amelia. You told him it was his, and he bought it. Brian was a fling back then. He'll never know." The clip was short, just under 30 seconds, but it was enough to destroy them both. Avery's office had already been circling disciplinary action due to HR violations. The moment that recording went public, she received a terse email. "Avery, effective immediately, your employment is terminated due to a violation of the company's ethics policy. Your severance is revoked pending an internal review." Please return all company property within 72 hours. She stood in her living room, staring at the screen, phone clutched in shaking hands. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came. Only a hollow gasp. Her mother, Lydia, didn't fare better. In their affluent suburban community, reputation was currency. And Lydia had just overdraft. Her weekly brunch group removed her from the WhatsApp thread without a word. Her bridge club canceled meetings until further notice. At Sunday service, her usual pew was mysteriously filled when she arrived late. One neighbor had the gall to say, "So that's where she gets it from," while walking past Lydia in the church parking lot. It wasn't long before the whispers turned to action. The board of the local women's circle, the one Lydia had proudly chaired for 6 years, asked for her resignation. "Lydia," one woman had said gently but firmly, "we can't have this kind of scandal attached to our name. It reflects poorly on our mission." Lydia didn't protest. She sat in silence, holding the china teacup too tightly in her lap. The handle snapped off in her hand. Kara served Brian with divorce papers the same week. No mediation, no discussion. Her message was clear. "You're not part of this family anymore." Brian didn't even fight it. She'd already hired a forensic accountant, frozen their joint assets, and filed for sole custody of their 2 sons. She had proof, years of infidelity, abandonment, and emotional negligence. The court hearings were swift and brutal. He was allowed visitation, supervised once a month. His sons barely looked at him. His older boy, 12, refused to hug him during the first visit. Just stood near the corner of the room with his arms crossed and a single question. "Did you ever love Mom? Or were you just lying like you lied to them?" Brian had no answer. His face crumpled, but there was no one left to care. He was sleeping in a rented room above a friend's garage, checking job listings with little hope. His professional reputation was torched. His LinkedIn connections dropped by the hundreds. Recruiters stopped responding. Even a nearby auto shop turned him down. "We don't want trouble, man," the owner said bluntly. "And your name brings it." Avery couldn't stay in the apartment for long. The rent was too high, her bank account dwindling. Her company severed all ties. Friends ghosted her one by one. Even the few who initially offered sympathy went quiet after the audio leak. "You lied about your kid's father?" One coworker messaged before blocking her. "That's sick. Don't ever contact me again." With nowhere else to go, Avery moved back in with her mother. The same house where she'd once planned baby showers, where she posed in front of the fireplace for family Christmas photos with Henry, the man she had betrayed more deeply than she could fathom. That house now felt like a prison. The blinds stayed closed. The doorbell was ignored. Groceries were ordered online and left on the porch. Avery sat in the same robe for days, hair in a frizzy bun, eyes hollow and glassy. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she no longer had the will to check it. The only time she spoke was to whisper, "Does he know?" About how bad it got. Her mother would never answer. Henry watched from a distance. Not from bitterness. Not even from satisfaction. Just awareness. He sat in the passenger seat of his lawyer's car as they went over final filings. He clicked through social media posts calmly, almost clinically. He saw Kara's post go viral. Saw Brian's face edited into memes. Saw Avery's name trending alongside hashtags like paternity fraud is real and justice for Henry. But he didn't comment, didn't message, didn't gloat. He simply watched. He had lit the match. The flames had done the rest. A few days later, while at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, Henry received a message. Unknown number. "Please, we need to talk. I'm so sorry. Please give me a chance to explain. You don't have to take me back. I just want to hear your voice. Please." It was from Avery. 5 more messages followed, all begging, all breaking. He read them once, then deleted them. In the next booth over, a young mother was laughing with her daughter, bright, easy, unburdened. The child spilled a bit of hot chocolate on her sleeve and giggled. Henry looked out the window, watching the afternoon sun stretch golden fingers across the sidewalk. He inhaled slowly. He hadn't smiled in weeks. But right then he did, just faintly. The mountain air was different here, lighter, cleaner, and full of silence that didn't suffocate. Henry had traded traffic noise and echoes of betrayal for pine trees, birdsong, and the quiet rhythm of an honest life. He now lived in a modest craftsman-style home tucked against the edge of a sleepy Colorado town. Far from the city, far from her. The mornings were simple. Coffee brewed before sunrise. Willow stirred in the bedroom, sometimes with a groggy babe when he left the covers. Her daughter, Lila, who was 8 going on 18, always stomped out of her room by 7:30 a.m. looking for waffles. And Henry? He smiled now. Genuine smiles, not the hollow kind he'd worn in his old life. The kind that faded the second he turned away. This life was smaller, quieter, but it was real. Willow had met him 2 years earlier at a bookstore downtown. She was buying Lila a copy of Green Gables. He was reaching for a book on woodworking. Their hands brushed, they both chuckled, and for the first time in a long while, Henry didn't instinctively pull away. She was different, steady, warm without being naive. She had her own cracks. Her ex-husband had left when Lila was 3, but she never wallowed. She'd built a life and welcomed him into it like a room she'd always kept ready. They didn't rush. Henry told her the truth early on about the betrayal, the lies, the years it took him to feel anything again. Willow listened without flinching. "You're not broken," she'd said softly. "You were just hurt deeply by someone who didn't know what love was." That night, he kissed her forehead and cried in silence while she held him. It was a Thursday afternoon in late spring when the past finally knocked. He had just gotten home from the local lumber yard. Lila's science fair project, a working model of tectonic plates, had taken over the kitchen. Willow was in the garden, humming and talking to her tomato plants like they were close friends. Henry was brushing sawdust from his flannel when he saw the unfamiliar sedan parked at the curb. His stomach dropped. A shape from another life stepped out. Avery. She stood by the sidewalk, visibly trembling, clutching her purse like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. Her hair was shorter, duller. The spark she once used to mask her manipulations was gone, replaced by something hollow. Her eyes met his. Her breath caught. He didn't move, just opened the front gate and stepped onto the path. "Hi," she croaked, barely audible. Henry said nothing. I didn't know if you'd even be here," she said, trying a weak smile. "I found you online. I know I shouldn't have come, but..." He waited. "I needed to see you. Just once." Still silence. She fidgeted. "You look good. You look really good." He tilted his head, voice low and steady. "Why are you here, Avery?" She swallowed hard. Her shoulders slumped. The practiced confidence she used to wear like a second skin was gone. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "My job, my friends, even Mom. She moved to Arizona after her stroke. She barely talks anymore. She's ashamed of me." Henry kept his eyes on her, his face unreadable. "I just wanted you to know." "I'm sorry," Avery said. Her voice cracked. "I really am. I was stupid, arrogant. I didn't understand what I had, what I was destroying." "You didn't understand?" Henry echoed, his voice cool. "I do now," she rushed. "I've had years to think about it. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I was selfish. I used people. I thought I could get away with anything. But I see now what I did to you. What I did to our life." Henry exhaled slowly. "Do you think you're the victim?" "No," she said quickly. "No, I know I'm not. I lost my way." He stared at her. "No, Avery, you didn't lose your way. You chose it." Tears welled in her eyes. She stepped forward slightly, voice trembling. "Please, Henry, just tell me there's a part of you that can forgive me. I don't want anything. I'm not here to ask for another chance. I just need peace." A beat of silence. Then another voice rang out from behind the gate. "Daddy, I can't find a red paint. Did you move it?" Henry turned. Lila stood on the porch, barefoot, hair messy, holding a paper volcano. He smiled softly. "Check the garage, sweetheart. Top shelf. I'll help in a minute." Lila gave a thumbs up and ran off. When he turned back, Avery's face was pale. "She calls you," she began. "She's not mine by blood," Henry said, "but she's mine where it counts." Avery nodded, blinking fast. "She's beautiful." He studied her, really looked. The woman before him was unrecognizable from the one who'd once mocked his love behind closed doors. "I'm not here to gloat," Henry said at last. "But I will say this." Avery's breath hitched. "You didn't come here to apologize. You came here because you lost. Because it hurts now. And it hurts you. She opened her mouth to protest. I gave you everything, he went on. Faith, time, a family. You turned all of it into a lie. Not just once. For years. And when I left, it wasn't out of anger. It was out of necessity. I had to save what little was left of me. Tears streamed freely down Avery's cheeks now. I know, Henry. Please believe me. He stepped closer, his voice quieter. You never apologized for what you did. You're only sorry you lost. Her knees buckled slightly. She grasped at the edge of the gate for support. I don't know how to live with the guilt, she sobbed. That's not my problem anymore. She looked up at him, eyes red, mascara running. You really don't care anymore? Henry took a long breath, then shook his head. I cared for too long. Now I live. She backed away slowly. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I had to try. He nodded once. Then you've done that. She stood there for a moment longer, defeated, then turned, walked to her car, and drove away without another word. Later that evening, Willow found him in the garage. He was sanding a piece of cedar for a new bookshelf he'd promised Lila. You okay? She asked gently. Henry nodded. Yeah, just. Closed a chapter. Willow didn't press. She stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him from behind, and rested her cheek on his shoulder. He leaned into her warmth. The past had come, and he'd faced it not with rage or revenge, but with the unshakable peace of a man who'd already moved on. The early evening sun poured golden light through the living room windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Henry sat on the couch, a book in his lap, though he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. Instead, he stared out toward the backyard, watching Willow and Lila laugh as they chased the dog across the grass. There was a peace to it, a stillness, something he once thought he'd never know again. Willow eventually stepped inside, cheeks flushed, strands of hair sticking to her temple. She flopped beside him, still laughing. She's got an arm on her, Willow said, wiping her brow. I think she almost broke the sound barrier with that tennis ball. Henry chuckled. She's determined. There was a quiet moment before Willow's expression shifted, a little more serious. She glanced at him, hesitating. Can I ask you something? She said softly. He nodded. Do you ever? I mean, with everything that happened, do you ever regret it? Not staying? Not trying to fix it with Avery? Henry looked at her fully, eyes steady. He didn't flinch at the name anymore. It was just a word now, an echo that no longer had the power to draw blood. I regret one thing, he said after a pause, only that I let it go on as long as I did. Willow studied him, then nodded. Fair. He closed the book and set on the table. But if I hadn't gone through it, if I hadn't burned it all down, I don't know if I'd be here. With you. With Lila. She smiled, eyes shimmering. You sure about that? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Willow froze. I'm now, Henry said. She stared at the box, then at him. Are you serious? As serious as I've ever been. He opened it. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, with a single diamond and a slender rose gold band, just the kind Willow liked. No flash, just meaning. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. You don't have to say anything now, he added. I just wanted you to know. I'm ready. Willow didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around him, laughing through her tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course yes. Henry exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he was holding, and the world felt weightless. A week later, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. Henry opened it cautiously, sitting on the back porch with the dog curled at his feet. The handwriting was familiar, confident, but with a tremor beneath the ink. Dear Henry, you didn't owe me anything. Not the truth, not the evidence, not even the decency of involving me. But you gave it to me anyway. You saved me. You opened my eyes when I was asleep in a lie I didn't know I was living. The day I got that envelope, it shattered me, but in the best way. I got out. I took the kids and I never looked back. And now I'm free. I'm remarried to a man who loves my children like his own. I owe that second chance at life to you. Thank you. Kara. Henry folded the letter and smiled faintly. Not out of pride, but a strange, quiet sense of completion. He hadn't needed thanks, but it mattered that it made a difference. Elsewhere, on the edge of a forgotten town 2 states away, A cracked neon sign flickered in front of a rundown diner. The linoleum inside was worn to the bone, the air stale with burnt coffee and fried grease. The booth sagged. The silence stretched long between the two figures seated at opposite ends of a chipped table. Avery stirred her cold tea with a bent spoon. Across from her, Brian sat hunched over a dry burger, his jaw tight. They hadn't planned to meet. It was chance or punishment. Either way, the universe had dragged them both here to the bottom. Avery looked older, much older than her 41 years. Her eyes were sunken, makeup caked to hide the fatigue that never truly left. She wore a faded coat, sleeves frayed at the cuffs. Brian didn't look much better. His beard was patchy. His once pristine blazer hung off his shoulders like it didn't belong to him anymore. His wedding ring was gone, and the indent on his finger had long faded. "You hear he moved?" Avery said finally, voice hollow. Brian didn't look up. "I found him. 5 years later. He's living somewhere in Colorado. New girl. Some little kid who calls him dad." Still no reply. "I tried to apologize," she said. "Didn't go well." Silence. "He said I wasn't sorry for what I did. Just sorry I lost." Avery laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. He was right. Brian finally looked at her, eyes flat. "Did you expect him to take you back?" he asked coldly. No, Avery met his gaze. "But I needed to see his face. I needed to know if there was anything left." And was there? She shook her head. "Nothing. He's happy." Brian scoffed and took a bite of his burger, chewing like it was sand. The silence thickened. Then Avery said quietly, barely above a whisper, "He lit the match, didn't he?" Brian stopped chewing. "He lit the match," she repeated, eyes unfocused, "and we gave him the gasoline." For a long while, neither said anything. The waitress passed by without stopping. She didn't recognize either of them. No one did anymore. They were ghosts of their own making. Henry stood at the edge of the lake, watching the sun disappear behind the distant hills. Willow was down by the water with Lila, skipping stones. The girl giggled every time one bounced more than once. He felt the ring in his pocket again and smiled. Closure wasn't a moment. It wasn't a letter or a confrontation. It was a choice. A quiet, stubborn, beautiful choice to move forward when the past begged you to stay trapped. He turned toward them and began walking down the slope, toward the people who had chosen him, and whom he had chosen back, with no secrets, no lies, and nothing left to burn.